All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Lunch and Learn. I'm Jeremy. I'll be leading our Lunch and Learn today from the training team. So I'll kind of start with the normal things. If you have any questions, though, please post them in the Q&A, um, so I can go ahead and answer them, or you can raise your hands and I can unmute you. Either way is fine. We prefer the Q&A just because it's easier to track for us. So definitely, if you'd like to ask questions, please go ahead and type them up in the Q&A, and I'd be happy to discuss them. While I give you all a chance to type anything up, if you have anything, I'll kind of go over some of the usual things and highlight some of our stuff that we've got. So um, uh, we have our YouTube channel. Check out our YouTube channel. We post content up there. We try to put some new things up every week, so you could definitely check that out and see some new things. And we have new updates, new changes to the system, or just interesting steps, interesting concepts, things that we've been either requested to learn more about, or things that we just think is important to highlight. We put them on the YouTube channel with little videos. So definitely some really cool stuff there. You can also check out our solutions marketplace. That's marketplace.decisions.com. You can check out a lot of cool applications that you can download and things that you can try out and upload into your system in Decisions. Another great place there. And then we have a couple events and things that are coming up as well. So we have our Submerse event, different from some of the more brand new user-friendly submerses. We're going to go over some pretty higher tech kind of things and some really interesting concepts. A new project that we have not shown off yet, so we'll talk about that as well. So definitely check that out. That's May 5th through the 8th. So if you want to register, you can go to decisions.com/events and you can register there, as well as our product roadmap review. So if you wanted to check that on any of those things out, you could easily do that. And so we just switch my screen there. There's decisions.com/events. You could register for Submerse or the roadmap reviews if you want to see what upcoming events and things are happening. We've got our YouTube channel, Decisions Training. We post all of our great content there. So, you can see some of the most recent things that we've uploaded and stuff. I don't think that's refreshed. Some of the most recent things we upload, all of our lunch and learns, but also things over like pages and dashboards. We actually have recently put up some like 5-minute overviews of some of the flow designers. So if you know anyone that wants a quick basic view on what some of these designers look like, you could easily have someone check that out. So lots of good stuff there. But with that in mind, we'll go ahead and start answering some questions. So again, if you have anything, please post it in the Q&A and we can get to those things. But I do have one question by Radley, so we're going to start with that. But while I answer that again, if anyone has questions, please add them and I'll be happy to discuss. All right. I will unmute you, Radley, so you can also add anything, but let me read your question out loud. So Riley says, I've built several SQL queries in local connection, save those to a project. I'd like to create reports using those queries as data sources, but I'm unsure how to use queries as data sources. All right, yeah, good question. Give me 1 second to grab something real quick. If you have anything to add, you can unmute and speak as well. But that's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, just couldn't figure out how to do that. The documentation says to create a query under in the system integration databases local connection, which didn't seem to make sense to me because it seems like that wouldn't be part of a project that I could promote to the repository and then in production. So just not sure how to proceed with this.
What version are you in?
9.6.
9.6. Okay, cool. So let me just clarify. You made stuff in through a database connection in here. Is that what you're talking about? Or
Um, I built it in the same structure you have. I built it in reports. So in the reports folder,
okay, you just did it from here,
yeah,
and then you
and then
built
created,
something through here.
yes.
Got it. Okay,
Yep, that's correct.
understood. Um, I think the main problem with that, uh, like adding a query integration through here, all this does is it's just adding it so you can have a step that just runs that query for you.
Got it. Okay.
So it's not necessarily something that can be reported on. It might be a little misleading because it's in like the data types, right? So
Right.
you kind of think, hey, I'm creating a data type, I can make a report off of this thing. Um, so it doesn't quite do it in that way. And it does say even here, like it adds a SQL query that can be used as a step. It doesn't actually save
So,
anything to an external database. So,
okay.
this is like where you're typically gonna make things, especially like joins and other things that can get a little bit more complex.
Sure.
It's more performant to use a query integration to do that than, try to make some combination of steps and decisions. But like as far as like reporting on it, the I don't think the query integration itself is going to like open that as a data source at least. Um, you said you looked at like a documentation. What do you know what that was? I can look at it and make sure if there's something misleading or if you were looking at the maybe a wrong documentation link.
Um, I don't have that handy right now. See if I can find it again. Okay. Yeah, so where it takes me um, immediately is documentation, decisions.com/doc/parameterized queries. I could just throw that in the chat or in the Q&A. All right, put the link in the Q&A.
Yep, got it.
And I'm not looking to do a query with parameters, but that's just where it took me.
Got it. So I'm wondering if this might be a little bit more beneficial for you because this is actually talking about uh like specifically using SQL data sources in reports. It's like it's under like some report stuff. This may be useful for you. Um, I can add it so that you can open that up. Um, I will say I have not personally done any like reporting from SQL things, but like the idea here is instead of using your own data source that's going to, like uh reach things, this is like a SQL source so you can actually reach into a database to grab the data for it.
Yeah,
Um,
and the all the queries I have are on the local connection. So I don't even have to go outside of
oh,
the
got it.
environment.
Yeah, you did say local connection. I kind of forgot that. Is there a reason that you need that if it's in your local connection, is there a reason you can't just report on that like object? Is it something that's different?
Well, I'm using, and this is an assumption, I'm using the views that are already built in there. So I guess maybe I could. I didn't even investigate that. Um, and that might work for some of them, but there's other ones that I am doing some joins, just writing some more complex things that are specific to what I need.
Right,
Um,
right, right. Oh, what is it doing to me now, decisions? Come on. Okay, that was weird. Yeah, because I'm not like it may be like if you're working with some kind of data source that you're running with, since it's on your local connection, you should be able to add it here, and then you know kind of utilize some of the options that we have among the views here to do that. And I know we do have some things. Some of them are definitely, I know we have like some functionality in here that's doable, but not the most performant, especially in large cases. So like you definitely want to be a little careful with some of them. Um,
yeah, and
but
I've done the raw SQL data source, but then you have to build all the columns then um, one at a time.
Right.
And like I said, I have several of these, so it would just take me a while. So I figured just see if I could just use these as a data source.
Right. Right. Hey, Gregory, I know you're on. I don't know if you've personally seen anything with this.
Can
If you
you
have anything to add.
for data sources, can you search SQL?
In data sources in infrastructure advanced, there is a raw data source, and you can use SQL there.
Yeah.
Under
And I was
advanced.
kind of hoping there was a better way to do that because then you have to build, like I said, you have to build all the columns for your reports, set all that up. At least that's what I've had to do in the past in prior versions.
You can create relationship between tables that you want to report on, but you're not going to be able to use some logic inside of the query.
Okay. And I think even with a couple of these queries, I just saved these straight out of the query editor. I didn't set up what we're looking at here. I think there were a couple of them I did, but then the other ones, just build a query in the query editor and saved it.
Hmm. Yeah, even if you have a way to like run the steps themselves, the query integration would still be like functioning, but like, that
Yeah,
still doesn't quite like solve the problem of
right.
doing it in a report in that way.
All right, well, very good. That's what I needed to know. Thank you.
Okay. Mhm. All right. Got quite a few questions. So, just be patient, everybody. I mean, most people are, and I don't know if anyone's not patient, but just warning everyone ahead of time. I've got three questions in the lineup, so we'll kind of work on getting to each of them. But our next question is going to be from Alex Potter, so we'll start with that one next. When a flow throws an exception, how do I catch it, notify it, and continue? What options would be available for the notify it step, given the email? Wait, sorry. What options would be available for the notified step, given that it is email that is throwing the exceptions? Thanks. All right, good questions. A couple quick things, just very quick things. What version are you running? Because there's two kind of things to think of.
8.19.
8? Okay, perfect. Then I won't show. So we did add in version 9 a way to add a default error handling process, but I won't worry about that. Can't spell. Really can't spell. Okay, so um, easiest step we have to catch exceptions is our literal catch exception step. Um, so, normally if you have just an error without any error handling or anything in your process, right, it's gonna run that problem, like catch the problem, pop up that like ugly message like right in the middle that says that you have an error and everything, right? So if you want to take that exception and do something a little bit more with it, or try to like, customize how you view it, typically people will use a catch exception step. And obviously in real cases, especially things that involve end users, we highly advise using this step to, to actually catch your
Yeah,
problems and
so
things.
I am using this thing. It's the point between the arrow and the end step that I want to configure something to notify. It's not, sorry, I should have capitalized IT. Like I want to get some visibility on this. I mean, I know I
Got
could
it.
just throw an error up on the screen and the end user would say, hey, there's a problem. I could say contact IT, but I'd actually like to get IT visibility on this. And, I mean, I thought of, putting in a log step or that sort of thing, but like, I just want something where it's kind of a push rather than an IT having to go and like look to see if something has happened kind of thing.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, obviously, I still think it's good to do a log step because you'll want this to be tracked on the system. That's one of like our best practices. We always push doing that in error handling in general. But like after that, you can report in a number of different ways. I think the really simple one is you can still make it send an email. So you can, you have your error, it happens up here, it catches that error, throws a log so you have some place to track it, in the system if you want, and then sends an email out to that, group that you need.
Yeah, the
And
problem is that it's email that's throwing the exception.
email like after the exception.
Yeah, so like that's the send email step that is throwing the exception. So that's why I'm kind of wondering what the alternative would be to get some visibility on this, given that it seems that email's not working.
Interesting. Okay. Um, there are other notification like steps that may benefit in some ways. It's also, I guess, maybe important. Does IT have uh accounts within decisions, or are
They
they
do, they do, yeah.
okay? So I guess maybe there's some things you can kind of consider with that as well. Um, but like there are like notification steps. I can't remember off the top of my head. It says it. This might just be through, I don't know where this appears. I haven't used these steps. There are others, there's like notifications that you can like send to people. But I'm not as familiar with this step to know exactly what that is. I'd have to look that up, which I can in a second. On documentations for what some of these notifications are. Um, that's a process notification anyway. Uh, so you can send, there's one. This is send notifications to accounts and groups. So you can actually create your message that comes from your exception uh, with the subject and everything and provide it to specific groups. It works similarly. Um,
And
and
so
you can
what
set
does it
exactly how
do?
this works.
Oh, so email, pop-up, SMS. Oh, SMS.
So yeah, so if depending on what you have like configured and stuff, you might be able to, provide those details and make sure that you send it through, obviously email will send it to the group's emails. I believe in this you'd have to provide numbers in the account in decisions. Um, I believe there's a field for phone number in there. But if they have their accounts and decisions, they're in, the IT group, you could have it send those messages, and things like that. There's a couple others, like other variations of this. I grabbed send notifications to accounts and groups. But there's other notification things you can send. Pop-ups are not a good idea because those would only appear if they're in decisions. So I would shy away from those kinds, like that kind of message because that's only gonna if they have decisions open, it'll pop up for them. But if they don't, they will likely not see it and they won't be able to tell. Um,
And so is there like an outcome on this for an exception if this step fails?
you can add it. Another thing you can do is like
So
all
add
steps
outcome for
have
exception.
an add outcome for exception that you can add here. So and doing these will like not allow the catch exception to catch it. So obviously then you can do something else. If this step itself errors out, do something else with it.
Right.
Um,
Okay,
as well.
great. That's food for thought. Appreciate that.
Yeah, of course. All right. Let's go to our next question then. Um, our next question is going to come from Shan. Let me read it. I'll give you the ability to talk as well, and then I'll go ahead and read it. After loading an Excel or CSV file before storing the information in the database, we need to do data cleansing. For example, if it's null or empty, we want to put a 0 there, change the date string into DateTime data type, etc. At the moment, we use converters to do our basic check or conversion, but it makes the flow very slow to load or maintain. Any suggestions on best practices on data cleansing? Okay. Right. Let me just open up all of our Excel and CSV steps we have here. I know you've come on Lunch and Learns in the past as well, and I'm assuming we're kind of utilizing a lot of these various Excel CSV steps to take in the data and everything. Um, and I know that there's a lot of useful manipulations in here that may help some of them. A lot of them are like resetting values. I'm trying to remember if there was a good uh, way to check or replace them. Maybe not. That's just converting types. I feel like I can't remember. It's been a little while. I feel like there was at least something that I've seen with like the, dates and date time stuff that works as opposed to needing to do like a full converter. Could be wrong. I might be wrong about that. I guess a couple things, maybe a couple things that stand out is, um, if in general you want to make it faster, um, have you considered doing things like, utilizing like a run flows for list step or something? Um, Depending on how the data is coming in, like, typically you're getting your data in as a bunch of rows of data, right? As you're taking in, each of the lines in your CSV and whatnot. Run flows for list is one useful option, mostly because you can allow it to run asynchronously, and this could help with speeding along a lot of those conversions. Because unfortunately, I don't know off the top of my head. I'd have to look into some of the other options of, um, making some of those conversions faster, or if there are ways that it can be done more easily. Um, so that, unfortunately, I don't know off the top of my head without having to, scroll through documentation or ask someone about. But the run flows for lists, normally asynchronous processes uh, don't actually output data. So, you run something just regularly, like run it asynchronously. This is not going to have any output of any kind. So, like if I just set, I can just pick two values here real quick, right? Obviously, actually, let's switch it. So we have something coming in as a string. We want it to come out as a date, for example. Um, you'll see if I have it set as asynchronous behavior, it can take in an input, but it doesn't actually have an output. As soon as I set it to async and wait behavior, this behavior allows it to run the data or run whatever this flow is building on additional threads. So it can run more simultaneously, and then it'll actually output the results. So I can actually get that data and then use it later. And so that's often what a lot of people will do if they still want data and they're trying to get data out of it. And we have one of our training projects that does that, where we pass in a bunch of addresses and we want to, you know, convert them to be in the right format and everything, like similar to what you're talking about. It's a little bit less complex in our training project because it's a training project, but we use async and wait so that we can do all the converting of the data, get it to be formatted exactly as we want, and then output all of the data after it has been reformatted. And so something like this allows you to at least do it on multiple threads. So you don't have to do, like your for each, right? For each Excel or CSV row, check if this thing is a null value. If it is, replace it with 0. Convert this date or this string to a date, blah, 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 blah. Like if all that's taking some time, run flows for list allows you to set this on multiple threads. By default, it's going to run 4 threads. So I'm basically going to be doing 4 things at once. So it'll be doing 4 rows at a time. And then once it finishes those ones, it'll do another 4 rows and like kind of like that. But like this is essentially just a flow that you can build out to then contain those conversions. the altering the whatever rules or conversions that you're taking to check the data and manipulate it as you need. And stuff like that. So I think that's the one way that you can help speed it along. And again, if you just use like a regular async or something, it is not going to output data. It'll just do the stuff. So if you want to save it to your database, you can do it that way as well. If you want to, have it do it inside the run flows for list in this step, manipulate all of your data, uh, make all of your conversions or whatever. And then at the end, while it's inside this, save that data, right? Then inside here, you can actually have this run completely asynchronously. And so then it can run on those separate threads, and the rest of this flow doesn't matter when that data gets updated. It'll just kind of update on its own. Or if you need to use that data later in your process and you want to be able to keep using that information, then you can use async and wait, and it'll run all of those things, wait for them all to get done, and then output that data so that you can use it through the rest of your process. Unless anyone else has additional like methods for speeding along, I'd have to ask, and I can definitely ask and get back with more information on speeding along the conversion process itself. But at least this is something I think that would be useful for assisting in some of that.
Okay, thank you.
But yeah, otherwise, I'll ask a couple people and see if anyone knows more about like that conversion stuff, and I can reach back out. If you want to just post your email, send your email to me in the chat. I can definitely get back to you if I hear a good response that might help with that process as well. All right. Yeah, I'll move on to the next question, but I will ask around and I'll get back to you for sure if I hear any new information on that. Okay, and we got a few questions from Alexander Stewart, so we're going to go ahead and start talking about those. At the moment,
Hey,
all of these questions I think are all we have. So if anyone else has additional questions, please feel free to type them up and we can get to them after we finish these.
so I found out the first one I actually figured out on my own during the call, which I
Okay.
great, appreciate that.
Yep.
The second question I have is, could you go over you said there was new ways to do error handling in decisions 9, which we just upgraded to. So we're
Yep.
using the old catch exception way where we kind of like put them everywhere where it might happen, And if there's a
Yes.
better way, I'd love to know more about it.
Yeah, of course. Happy to help. So, in any project under health, there's actually an error handling section here. And what you can do is you can actually create a default error handling flow. So if you just want like a general flow to exist that will be able to catch your exceptions and run for error handling, if you create a flow here and you build it, then it'll automatically catch all of your exceptions in any flows in your project itself. It'll automatically catch them and then run them through this flow that you build here. If you want additional error handling, you want like, let's say you have 10 flows and for 9 of them, you want just basic error handling, then you can go ahead and you can build this flow. Let me just create a quick sample. Like 9 of these 10 things, you can build a flow. And in this flow, you just want it to basically catch the exception and throw a log that you want to customize, right? You could easily do that. So I can, set this, maybe I want this to be an error message and make this my lunch and learn category so I can easily search for it in my logs. Then I can build my value, and you'll notice if I use flow data here, I still get all the usual things I get from a catch exception step, the exception messages, the stack trace, the step and flows that they happened in, all that stuff. So I can very easily, build my error message how I want to, or customize how I want to. I could send email messages, notifications, pop-ups, whatever it is I want to do with it. I could easily just set that up in here. And so the nice and simple, and then it'll always run that process. So like actually, if I just make this just for quick demo purposes, make this a pop-up that's going to appear in the center for my account. And I'll just grab the exception message here. So it'll show a pop-up whenever an error message appears. Right now I have my error handling flow. It's just one flow. I can't have multiple. It's just one main default flow. But let's say almost all of my flows, if I have an error in it, I want to be able to throw this. So, if I open up this message again and I leave it not connected. So obviously that's going to throw an error because it's not going to work. I don't have a catch exception step or anything like that inside that flow, but it doesn't matter. If I run this, it gives me that pop-up with the message and everything that I built in my error handling. So it'll do that automatically for you. So now I don't have to, every time I create a new flow, add that error handling to it. And I know some people might just have a subflow that they add to their process every time, but then every time you make a new flow, you have to add a catch exception step and your error subflow. Now you can just build it once inside this, and all of your flows will have that automatically in it. Let's say you have one or a few flows that you don't want that catch exception or the default exception to run. You want your own. Well, then you can just simply, any error handling that you build in this flow will override the error from the default. So if I do decide, hey, I do want, at least for this specific flow, to have my own process for catch exception, because if this flow errors out, I want to make sure that it doesn't just get logged, it gets emailed to myself so that I can, check the data. Then if that's the case, this catch exception will send me the email first. And then since it doesn't have another error, it'll just end the process and it won't run the default error handling. So there's a lot more, variability in how you do it, but a little bit like initial setup and then done. You don't have to worry about it.
Are you saying that whatever? So I already have some, like in my workflow, my job, I already have some catch exceptions. So those will still run with no issues inside the flow?
Yep.
Okay, and I can actually go back and retroactively add error handling for all the flows that we missed, right? That we added in. And those will now have error handling, right? Throughout the entire project.
Yeah. So all you have to do is create that default
Mhm.
one, and then all flows that don't have any error handling in them at all. So that, all old flows that you just didn't add them to because you had too much, you were lazy, it was just difficult or hard work to add a bunch, or maybe you just weren't experiencing errors, so you weren't that concerned. Any new flows that you build, you don't have to add error handling to them unless you want something more unique than the default one that you built.
Is it, am I able to turn it off for some, like, I don't know why I would ever want to, but if I wanted to, can I turn it off in certain areas? Like, and just have nothing? Or is it just kind of like a big grab
That's
all?
actually a good question. I don't know if you can, actually. As far as I'm
And on top of
aware,
that, this error handling, does it stop the flow or does it just kind of, alert me? I can use it as an alert.
it
And
will
if I want
not
to actually
go
stop it, I have to
it
go in
will
there.
not go back into the flow. It will throw your error happens. It does whatever you built your error handling to do. In my case, my pop up, and then it just ends the process. So anything after that error will not continue.
Got it, got it. Now, what if I wanted to continue? Like, because I know some errors, like an API failure, depending on how you set it up, could still run throughout.
Yep.
Is there a way to like set up a
So
catch-all that maybe just alerts me, but like keeps it going?
yeah, so anything that you want to be able to continue or do something
Mhm.
else with it, that's when you just manually put it in the flow. So like I know a lot of the API ones have a pathway that comes out of the step automatically for if there's an error. All steps have add outcome for exception. So if you don't want that to run to the default one, because you want it to have the opportunity to go back into your flow or keep running the rest of your process, you can have an an add outcome for exception or a catch exception step that then goes to another step in your process, to continue it without interruption. As long as you have error handling like placed in the flow itself, it won't run the default one because it's going to run the one inside this flow. But it's the default one is more for if you just haven't built anything in your process yet, you don't have to go out of your way to add additional steps in your flow. It'll automatically run the default one.
Nice, nice, nice. That's great to hear.
Okay. And then, so then your last question, you said, how can you delete a step template? Are you
Yep.
referring to like if I take these 2 steps and I save them as a template?
Correct.
That? And then I have like these templates here, right? So I can easily drag those steps back in. There is a place where templates appear, and I just have to remember. I don't think it's these. Oh no, it is. Under configuration, templates, and then it's called flow snippets, where if you template some steps in a flow, it's called flow tip snippets, and then you'll see the list of like your templates under here. It's
Great.
just my
I
folder
can
for the flow templates, and then
I
I
need to
can
delete it some and
you can just delete them.
not find it. Thank you.
All right. That is currently all the questions that we have so far. Last chance for anyone else on the call. Any other questions? If not, we can go ahead and end a little bit early
Oh,
today.
I do have one more question.
Go ahead.
Sometimes we have a global step that we use, basically a global folder, right? And these are for constants that we know we're going to use throughout multiple projects, and so we make it available to all projects.
Yep.
Now using the error handling method, I know the error handling works on everything inside that project, but what about something that's a subflow from another project? Would it follow the error handling in that project or the project that it's in, or possibly,
Yes.
what?
It'll follow whatever the project that item is associated with.
Mhm.
So, if you don't have error handling at all in like your global project, that I'm not sure how that functions because the error would throw and yeah, I think that because the arrow throws inside the subflow itself. So like if I had a flow with a subflow in it, the arrow throws on like the flow, right? Like if this is my flow that I'm running, and I have a subflow inside. What's that annotation? Is it one word? Oh, just do that. Blah, blah, blah. Let's just grab a random flow, right? If the error occurs, I didn't have these 2 steps and it's not connected. Like if the error occurs, I believe the error occurs inside this flow itself. So if I were to run this flow, it's going to tell me that it ran in this flow, the Excel data cleansing one. So it's the error that occurred is in that flow. So it's going to run the error handling for that flow, which would take place in your, global project. So error handling in your global project is what's going to be running to, output or send out the data or log the data or whatever for your message. It'll give the information about the step and the flow that it ran, but it'll run whatever's in that project's flow. for anything like that. So yeah, you'll definitely want to make sure that that global project has some kind of error handling within it. I'm fairly certain it will not run anything else. Do I have? Oh, I actually do have a global project. Do I have any flows in here? Oh, I could do this. I can test this real quick, actually. Then let me make sure this is a dependency. Global project. Let me go in here and I'll make that flow have an error. Not connected. Okay. And then I'm fairly certain I don't have any error handling in here. Okay, so let's see what happens if I do have no error handling in global entities, if it'll run my regular error handling, or if it just will do nothing. Let me global entities project testing flow. And we're gonna run this and see what happens. Yep, yeah. So even though I have error handling in my lunch and learn project, I do not have error handling in my global project. So it is not going to run my lunch and learn's error handling. It'll just throw a regular error in that. So if I were to go back and just put some kind of error handling inside my global project, oh, forgot to make that appear to my user. I like center notifications better. I'm gonna do that. Yeah, I just think they look nicer and they're more obvious. Okay, there we go. So now if I have error handling there and I go back to this project that's running that flow with an error in it, and then if I run it, there it goes. It runs the error handling inside your global. So since they are separate projects, they are separate error handling. Anything in your global project will only run global project error handling. Anything in your other projects will only run those projects error handling.
Gotcha. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, good questions. All right. Well, we don't have anyone else. We can go ahead and close it off for the day. Yeah, it looks like a lot of people have already left anyway. So thank you all for joining. It was a great lunch and learn, a lot of good questions. So we always appreciate the questions. Still have 2 more lunch and learns this week. It's a Jeremy and Gregory sandwich today or this week. So I will be leading tomorrow. Gregory will be leading on Thursday, closing off the rest of this week. If you have any questions, please feel free to send them to us in email at training@decision.com ahead of time if you'd like, or just the usual, post them during the lunch and learn, and we'll be happy to help you. Hopefully, we'll see you all again tomorrow.
Thank you.